because this might be the inner chronicle of what we are. And we have to articulate ourselves, otherwise we would be cows in a field.
I think you're overthinking
That's
it and
the
getting
hard
a little
problem.
tense.
Okay.
That's the problem.
All right,
You just
I think we
gotta
gotta
roll into it.
Okay, so how would you say I roll into it? Welcome to Cows in the Field. This is a movie podcast. It is a podcast where we take seriously Werner Herzog's famous quote.
Have the monks stopped meditating? They all seem to be tweeting.
And today we're talking about two debut films by the two Andersons, Wes and Paul Thomas. The films we're talking about today are Hard Eight by Paul Thomas Anderson and Bottle Rocket by Wes Anderson.
Yay!
If I were to give you $50, what would you do with it?
I'd eat.
How long can you eat? How long can you live on $50?
I don't know.
I would bet not very long. It's always good to meet a new friend.
Oh, you took care of him?
John is a very old friend.
I think he's pretty adorable, the way he follows you around and looks up to you.
Hello.
Hi. I don't do anything that I don't want to do. You understand?
Obviously good quickness.
Yeah, in and out pretty fast.
Real fast, man, and good intensity.
High intensity.
Great intensity, because I was like, doing like really
and and the
fast.
preparation was good, you know? I think that's your specialty.
Thank you, because if I said that one, it would sound like bragging. Bob Mapplethorpe, potential getaway driver, go.
I really want to be a part of this team, and I'm the only one with a car.
That's good. Because that hits me right here.
I'm Anthony. What's your name?
Inez.
Yay.
Yay. These are okay, so we're excited. And, normally we just do these on our own and it's pretty boring, but today we have a very special guest. Hailing from across the river, we have Mattia Acetoso of Boston College. He's an assistant professor of Italian studies, and he's a longtime friend of myself and Laura's from grad school days, where we met in the HGS common room, I think. And Mattia.
Yes, hello. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah.
Here, virtually.
Did we
not
meet
in the same room at this time?
Not in the same room. We're keeping it safe. But did
Yes.
we in fact meet in the HGS common room? Or did we meet in the courtyard?
No, we met, I believe I saw you in the dining hall. The first time we met, we spoke to each other. I remember clearly it was a Gypsy.
Nice.
This is the grad school bar.
And I remember the first thing I asked you. Well, I remember that because I asked you, what instruments do you play? Because I could tell this guy's cool.
Oh my God. So that was like late August, early September or something. How quickly were you guys like doing Halloween costumes together? Like, was that first fall?
No,
or was that the next fall?
Definitely the next fall. We
you were Flight of the Conchords.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, because I'm not sure though. But it must have been the same fall though.
You think it was first year?
Because Liz was in New York, and I think she came later as Mel, and you and I. Probably, I have to double check my records.
Yeah, it might have been.
I have photographs of everything. So
I mean, we have photographic evidence. But I love that. I love that. That's the first thing to ask. Is like, okay, look at you. What instruments do you play?
Yeah. Probably I was there at Gypsy for a few hours before you were now. It was probably I had a gin and tonic before that, so it was like easier to ask a question. So, but I remember it was very nice. I mean, but then like we became friends.
We were fast friends. Yeah, we did so many things together. We watched so many movies together. We watched. Were you part of the group that when we watched all of Twin Peaks in the basement of HGS?
We started. There was the two of us and
Chris Nixon.
Started watching it, and started in the basement. But then we graduated to the classrooms in the HGS where there were all these.
Yeah.
It was like being in an old theater, and enjoyed it. It was perfect.
Yeah.
It was doing spring break, and I think we stopped that viewing session at episode 8 of season 2, which is a very important episode. So and then it was a good moment to stop, I think. I think that
is that when you find out who kills Laura?
Yeah, you find out who. That's one of the best episodes too.
But I don't know if you remember, but that's when I think you recorded your version of the song.
Just
together.
You and I.
Yeah.
Just you. I should see if I can.
You want to insert it in here?
I should see if I can find it and insert it in. Yeah.
Did you re-record it or no?
Yeah, I mean, I recorded it in my room on GarageBand, but I have not re-recorded it since. No.
That's fine.
This is so lovely. This is all before I met you. So I'm enjoying piecing together the timeline of your friendship.
So this mini series we're doing is 1996, and I feel like it's always a good time to revisit at least Wes Anderson's debut, Bottle Rocket. And here's a question for you guys. What was your first experience with Wes Anderson? I take it was not watching Bottle Rocket, I would assume. It was definitely not that for me.
No.
What was it for you?
I think it was Rushmore. And then quickly thereafter, Tannenbaums. And then quickly thereafter, Bottle Rocket, because I rented all of them in a couple of weekends.
But this was because those movies were the only 3 that he had made at that point.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think Life Aquatic was coming up soon. If I got that right. Yeah. So I was in the 8th grade and I had a friend who was cooler than me who was like, I'm into Wes Anderson. And I was like, what? And then watched all of them right away.
That's cool.
Mine was Royal Tenenbaum, and I wish I remember I watched it. I remember who I was with. I remember where I watched it, and I can tell you I watched it dubbed in Italian. So because
oh my gosh,
I was still it was 1999. When was it released? I think 2000,
something like that. Yeah.
I need to double check, but I think that and I was in Italy at the time, and I'm pretty sure that most of the references to American literature, American film was lost on me. But I'm being blown away completely. It's like when you find I like this, and I spent probably time afterwards rethinking about it, watching it again. And I remember going backward to his previous films. And I think the second one I watched was Rushmore, and then I went to Life Aquatic. And I think Baroque came afterwards, and so.
That's interesting. Yeah. So for me, I watched Life Aquatic in theaters, and I didn't know what I was going into. And a friend of mine was like, "Hey, let's go watch a movie." And I think I want to actually say it was my friend Robert, who I watched Mulholland Drive with, who I've talked about on this podcast before. But anyway, I think it was Robert and I. We were like, "Yeah, let's go watch a movie." We went to this theater in Santa Rosa, and I don't think I had even seen the trailer for this movie. So I didn't know what I was getting into. I was just like, okay, great. And it was I think it might have even been an opening weekend. And I went in, theater was packed. And I remember how dry the humor was. And by the end of it, I was totally on board. But I remember just being confused for I don't know, 30 minutes until I got into the groove. And then I was then I was completely sold.
Yeah. I think I took a boyfriend to see Darjeeling and Limited in theaters, and I think he had a similar out of body alienated experience. That's a hard one I think to jump into, but if everybody else I think in the theater was a Wes Anderson fan and knew what to expect, and he was like, "What is this?"
No, I remember Royal Tenenbaum really blew me away, and I don't understand why it was very popular at the time in Italy, but nothing else by Wes Anderson was popular again or before that. So it's kind of it was a bizarre coincidence that I was in that theater watching that film with a group of friends.
But so I'm curious. So for me, the first experience with Paul Thomas Anderson, I believe, was Magnolia, because I think it was when I saw Magnolia in high school. And I believe I thought it was a really cool movie because it's so smart and slick, and it has the narrator at the beginning and everything. And I remember I would always show it to my friends. It was that and Memento. Those are the 2 movies I'd be like, "Oh, guys, you got to see this."
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
I remember, forcing it down. And it's a 3-hour movie. So I think my friends didn't appreciate that when I'd be like, "All right, let's sit down and watch this 3-hour movie." They're probably "Oh my God, this pretentious little Justin." But anyway, I think that was my first Paul Thomas Anderson.
I'm trying to remember. I think it's again that I did 2 at once almost, but I didn't realize it because I wasn't paying attention to him as a director. So definitely I saw Magnolia in early high school and it like blew my mind. And I listened to the Amy Mann soundtrack incessantly for like 3 years. It was just like in my car all the time, just singing Amy Mann. But I also watched Punch Drunk Love with my dad. And we had like a running joke where we'd be like, I love you and I have a lot of pudding. So we like, for whatever reason, the pudding part of that movie just really like worked for us. But I don't think I realized there was the same director at the time.
Yeah, no, totally. That makes perfect sense. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
But they were both important movies to me. And I feel like they were right around like middle high school for me at the same time.
My first experience was Magnolia as well. It was kind of, and it was a special year for to me. I really probably it was either triggered my interest for film, like trying to understand intellectually, and I didn't understand Magnolia intellectually the first time I saw it, but I was blown away by the biblical references, by the scope of it, by having this choral sort of like cast, and it's a very ambitious film, and so I was blown away. And it was the same year that American Beauty came out, Boys Don't Cry, a bunch of other like good films came out, international films. And I remember like being especially like impressed by Magnolia, and I was kind of obsessed with P.T. Anderson for a while, like Punch Drunk Love and anything is done afterwards. And but Hard Date is like I saw it many years ago, and I didn't remember anything, so I have to rewatch it like a few days back, and then. And I was pleasantly surprised because you can tell, you watch it and you can tell, like, okay, you can see the seeds of what would become already. If you can even take scene by scene, you can tell what would happen afterwards. And then it's strange thing is that doesn't hold that film in a very high opinion. He doesn't like it very well. Really? I read some interviews or saw him when he's like, yeah, I kind of did this film, but mostly I was interested in doing boogie nights afterwards. Can I use this as an opportunity?
I mean, maybe let's use that as a starting point. So one thing that we wanted to think about, being that these were two debut films, and they both debuted in they both debuted in 1996, and they both these directors basically went on to become, in a certain respect, like the vanguard of American auteur cinema, of not only the 90s, but like continuing till today. And both of these guys are directors who have basically carte blanche to make whatever they want. And it's generally well regarded by critics, generally makes money at the box office.
Actors really want to work with them.
Yeah, they're prestige enough directors that they can bring in, cool people to do fun and interesting projects. And they have a certain style, each of them, that's very distinct. Anyway, it's interesting that these two guys debuted in 96. And one of the things that, when you're thinking about a debut film, one of the things that's interesting is to think about what themes in that film or what style it's in that film resonate later, outward into their other movies. And what can you see in this film that is going to come up later and get revisited? And, what techniques are they developing here that they're going to master in a later movie?
Can I add something? Because there's one thing about these two films. If you watch them, if you see, we already said, you watch Hard Date and you can tell, okay, this is a P.T. Anderson film. Like, this is going to become something. And you find already like more than themes that of course you have, but also in terms of style, it's already promising. You have some conventional techniques, but also something that you find like long tracking shot, like unusual angles. And whereas you watch Bottle Rocket, think of Wes Anderson, like the first thing that people love or hate is symmetrical frames and the cinematography, colorful, odd costumes. That you get nothing of that in Bottle Rocket. There's very little, like stylistically, they would tell you, okay, this is going to be Wes Anderson.
Yeah. Let's think about that. Yeah.
I mean, there are a few insert shots, I think, which is like a Wes Anderson, like a top down Wes, if like, I think when they're robbing Anthony's house, there's like some quick shots of like all the things that they're stealing and little like figurines and things like that. And I think there's some slow-mo and some needle drops, but not too heavy.
Yes.
I think one of the big differences for this movie versus the later ones is that I really love Bottle Rocket because it's a Dallas movie. Yeah. It's shot in Dallas. They never explicitly say it, but it is. And it feels like authentically Dallas in a way that I love. And Wes Anderson is like finding the places and spaces in Dallas that like suit his like sensibility and his aesthetic, but he's not like, he doesn't have the budget yet to create his own world, which most of his movies afterwards, not so much Rushmore 2, that's in he films that in Houston, I think. But going on after that, I think he's kind of creating like his own dollhouse worlds.
No, definitely. Definitely.
And,
sure.
and he's not.
That's what I was meaning to say, that in a sense you see some of the seeds, but the promise is there, but it's not as evident as in Hard Day.
Yeah, it's not as realized.
It's not. You still have some of the techniques, but it's so subtle, so much more hinted. It's less in your face. And personally, I think it's a major advantage. Like if I go back and I have to convince people of what probably we can talk about it later, but what I found strong about Wes Anderson cinematography, because the difference between like P.T. Anderson and Wes Anderson is that somehow universally, you mentioned that, Justin, is that P.T. Anderson is universally acknowledged as an author, as a sort of like a director of quality, where Wes Anderson is very divisive still. And when I want to convince people that Wes Anderson is not just style, it's not like colorful, like doll houses, but there are very important themes that are very like, there's an extreme love for his characters. I show them, or I direct them to Bottle Rocket, because Bottle Rocket is the kernel, like out of which I think that the foundation where he's going to build his world. And
where all the other ornamentation starts to build that on top of it.
I think that for totally, I think that's right. And I think that is actually one of the reasons I'm drawn so strongly to Bottle Rocket. And I actually think it's one of his best movies, partly because I feel like the artifice is not there. So it allows him to just play, I think, maybe in a more free way, in that he can just sort of play with the characters and he's not worried too much if the shot isn't perfectly arranged or whatever. And so one of the themes that Wes Anderson seems very interested in getting at is, I think, this idea of having a kind of misfit group of people that are like bound together in some way, carrying out there's conflict within that, but they're carrying out some sort of fantasy project. And so this is something that definitely you get in Bottle Rocket, right? Like these guys like Dignan, Anthony, and Bob are like, I don't know, they're like outcasts who want to, rob the cold storage and get in with Mr. Henry, who's this, I don't know, professional thief. But then you see the same sort of thing in like Life Aquatic. It's like you have Bill Murray's character, Steve Zissou, he's like the leader of this ragtag group of renegade filmmakers who go out and like they have a boat and they go out and make these like absurd movies where that like pseudo fiction documentary hybrid movies. And I think if you think about it, like that's kind of like what being a filmmaker is in a way. It's like getting your friends together and like going out and doing this collaborative project. And I think Wes Anderson is like really drawn to that. And to me, this like, it comes out so clearly here. He's like love of that sort of engagement with people, engagement with your friends, like this idea of like, we're just going to do it ourselves. Damn the man. We're out on our own. And I think at one point,
Dignan.
Yeah, Dignan. He says, on the run from Johnny Law.
On the run from Johnny Law. It ain't no trip to Cleveland.
And I feel like that's like kind of embodies the ethos of that movie for me.
Yeah. In a sense, all these characters are kind of like are misfits, and then you see that like in this, like even the Max Fisher in Rushmore is a sort of an outcast. That he loves his school so much, but he's really like not a good student at all. And the brothers and sister in the Royal Tenenbaum, all the children of like Steve Zissou, but also like the three brothers in the Jimmy Limited, the two kids in Moira's Kingdom, and in a sense they're trying to like, what's beautiful about Wes Anderson is the kind of dignity that he gives to his like characters, and something that transpires from each and every one of his movies is that this incredible love for his characters, like because he gives them space. There's some kind of like, even in their fake fictional words, they're beautiful words that he wants them to, wants to thrive them in this kind of words. So that, and in Bottle Rocket, like these characters are really flawed, and yet you just like root for them. So
Yeah, you can't help but love Dignan.
I know Dignan.
Dignan is the best.
He's such
He's so
a
frustrating, but
character.
he's the best.
It's also that he doesn't judge his characters. He portrays them, empathetically and stuff. But it's also the characters around Dignan are also non-judgmental. I mean, aside from Future Man, but like they, like especially Anthony, right? Anthony's relationship to Dignan is one of like he is both like cares about him and is worried about him, but he also like is. I don't know. He admires him. In a way.
He's attracted to that energy and that
the creative
sort of freedom that Dignan has, but also like wants to take care of him because he's so fragile.
Yeah, because Dignan is a kind of complete lunatic in a way, and he's gonna go. He's running dangerously close to being imprisoned, and that ends up happening for him. But what I find so interesting is that like Anthony is just. He's just like, yeah, Dignan's who he is. Like, we're not, even when they disagree, fundamentally about, and that point of conflict between them in the middle of the movie, there's no hard feelings because he ultimately, respects and admires Dignan, and they come together at the end, towards the end, the second half of the movie.
I think the character that surprises you, like Dignan surprises everybody when he finally decides to sacrifice himself. It's like, no, this is me, and it's like I need to be the one, and then it's like they'll never catch me because I'm effing innocent.
Yeah.
That's when it's a little like the character reveals the strength and also understand the source of Anthony's admiration because he's ready to sacrifice for his friend, his friend sacrificed for himself. So.
Hey! The elevator broke! What? The elevator broke! Where's Applejack? He's stuck on the second floor, man, between two floors. Did he give you the keys? Did he give you the keys? Applejack drove.
What happened? I don't know. What happened?
Run! Go!
What the hell happened to the plan, man?
I don't know. Come on.
Okay, I'll meet you at Bob's. Go.
What?
I gotta get Applejack.
No, you're not. No.
Yeah, I am.
No! I gotta find Solo on this baby.
Okay, Dignan.
I don't have time to argue with you right now.
I don't have time either, okay, Dignan? Now, you get back to Bob's. Just go. Who is in charge here? You are, you dumb son of a bitch. Now, please leave. Give me this one. Give me this one. You gotta give me this one. Dignan, you know what's gonna happen if you go back there. No, I don't. You'll never catch me, man. Because I'm fucking innocent.
Well, okay. It's a double meaning on innocent because he's both he both like sort of believes that he is in some sense like innocent of whatever crime. They haven't really done anything. But on the other hand, he is an innocent. He is a person who is lacking, cynicism, and he takes the world at face value and accepts things as they come, and goes with the flow of I don't know, the hand that he's dealt. And so in that regard, he's also like a child in a way, like he's innocent in that sense.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking about our toddler a couple of times because when he's sort of mopey with the fireworks, and he's just like blows. Yeah, just sitting there with his sparkler, looking bummed out. And Anthony says to Inez like he just needs one drink, and then they do like a hard cut, and he's just grinning. In the bar, like he like you can't keep Dignan down for long. Like he's so buoyant.
But again, they see that he's the prototype of so many other innocent characters. Even like, now I forgot the name of the character of Bill Murray in Rushmore. Like they're adults, but they're like such children at heart.
They're children at heart.
And then like in Steve Zissou, and they ask like I feel like when I was 12 years old, and it says like 12 years old is the best age for a boy. For just like in a sense that because 12-year boy is like 12-year-old, like you're incredibly like curious and intellectually like engaged with the world, but at the same time there's a sense of innocence that gets lost because
it's before you become self-conscious about your interests, and before you start comparing them to your peer groups and stuff. Like you could just really love Dungeons and Dragons and not feel any shame about it. It's the best. It is the best time.
Oh, totally.
Innocence is definitely like a theme, or like overarching theme in all of his films, and then Dignan could be the prototype for that.
Yeah, I think that's right. I was also thinking in the sense that Dignan is an amalgamation of the two writers of the movie, Owen Wilson and Wes Anderson, in that he probably just embodies their ethos on the world, right? Like they want to be these people who value creativity and a kind of, enthusiasm about, I don't know, the projects that they're engaged in, regardless of what they are, regardless of how from the outside it's actually completely ridiculous what they're doing. And in a way, like being an actor, being a filmmaker, it is kind of ridiculous. You're spending all this time and energy and money making these fantasy worlds that you get to run around in. And that's basically what they do is they dress up in jumpsuits and they play in a way, I mean, they do, have real guns, I guess, but they do rob the place. But it's done so naively that you almost feel like you have to forgive them, right? And that when the cops are beating him up, and it feels like way too far. Like you don't need to beat this guy up. Like he's, he didn't really do anything that bad, right? There was no money. Kumar couldn't get the safe open.
Yeah. He was just in Hinkley cold storage and like threatened some people. That's it. That's all he did.
I think the stakes of the movie feel like so low. Even if they've done robberies and they're on the lam, it doesn't feel like this movie's going to end with anything bad happening to anyone. And granted, yes, he's in prison, but
he kind of seems happy and he's making his belt buckles.
Yeah. But I think part of the reason the stakes don't feel as intense as they might in, say, the Paul Thomas Anderson movie, right, as we're going to get to, is that both Anthony and Bob come from very wealthy backgrounds. So there's this interesting class divide between Anthony, Bob, and then Dignan, and where Dignan is like, socioeconomically much lower down than the other two. I mean, Bob lives in a Frank Lloyd Wright house, and Anthony clearly comes from wealth in the sense that, like, they rob his mom's house, but Dignan doesn't want, Dignan's like offended when Anthony's like, we should have robbed your house, and because he's like, no, there wouldn't be anything there to rob because he's ashamed of his lack of money, and I think what's interesting about this is that so you get this class division, which is like kind of there. It's not ever brought out to the surface that much, but it's sort of looming behind, the actions and the behavior of the two guys. But it really is like, I think they're each trying to escape their individual economic classes. Like Anthony is trying to run to be with these kind of like low life guys in a way, like Dignan and Mr. Henry and so on, these thieves, because he sees that as like a more authentic, or I don't know, real life. He's bored by the trust fund kids he was hanging out with otherwise. And Dignan is like trying to climb out of poverty in a way, and like he likes being around these guys who have wealth because in a way, there are no consequences when you have that kind of wealth. I think they're able to like fund his absurd creative exploits.
Right.
And I think that's interesting because I think often I don't normally, when I watch a Wes Anderson movie, start thinking about things like class or race, or these things are maybe they're there, but they're often like, it's more just like, we're in this fantasy world where there's a jaguar shark and stuff. And, but his characters are always quite wealthy, and the money isn't really an issue. It's not, but here it is an issue for at least one of the characters. And I find that like conflict between them, especially that's what drives their main conflict. Now that I think about it, Dignan and Anthony, their main fight in the middle of the movie is about money, right? It's about he gave up the money that they stole to Inez, and because he doesn't matter to Anthony. Anthony doesn't care. The money, like $500 was meaningless to him, but it meant a lot to Dignan, and it really upsets him that he gave up that money.
Right. And before they have that fight, or before he realizes what he does, he says, because Anthony says we're broke, and Dignan says, you're so spoiled. Like having a $500 isn't broke at all. Yeah. And Anthony's like, well, but yeah, and earlier in the movie too, Anthony had said something like, the only thing I've learned from this is crime doesn't pay. And Dignan's like, well, that's not very positive, because they got like $60 or whatever from like robbing the bookstore. Yeah. But for Dignan, that's a success. And for Anthony, he's like, why bother?
Well, it wasn't for him. The crime was not for the money.
Yes.
It was just for the fun of the thrill of being on the lam or whatever. Or just supporting his friend.
I think that's why they choose this kind of life. That by choosing a lower life, they kind of elevate themselves above their sort of like social differences. In fact, I have to be honest, like I never thought that the social class disparity like was on at the fore of in general Wes Anderson's films, especially not Bottle Rocket. But yeah, it's a good way to think about it. In general, like I see this social difference not just like as a sort of a criticism of like different social classes, but it's also a part of what drives the events in a sense. You mentioned that the conflict between the disparity in social classes between Anthony and Dignan, but think about Anthony and Inez.
Exactly. Yes.
Inez is even like she's an immigrant, of course, and then she lives. And the contrast with the responsibilities that come with class, it's even stronger in that case. Like Manson is like, okay, let's move, let's get out of here. Like, why not? And she's like, I have a job, I need to stay here, I need to make money, and this is where my life is. But Anthony's not portrayed as kind of like a jerk going like, hey, come here, I pay for everything, or like it's more like even his like we talked about Dignan's innocence, but even Anthony's in a sense sort of like captured by all these characters that are so driven, probably because he's looking for a direction himself.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that it's, again, for Wes Anderson, what's interesting is that there's this conflict between these two characters, and he never ever portrays Anthony as like this guy who's domineering, who's like, look, why would you want to stay here and be a poor housekeeper? Just come with me, I'll be your sugar daddy effectively. Like that's never on the agenda. He's just like sad that like he realizes in that moment that she has a commitment to her life independent of him, and that's the choice that she's made, and he just accepts that for the time being at least, and then they figure it out later. But and again, I think that's what Anthony's in a way looking for. He's looking for conflict. The thing that puts him in the mental hospital at the beginning, like the thing that he says puts him in the mental hospital in the beginning of the movie,
is a complete lack of conflict.
It's a complete lack of conflict. He's just like, I don't want to live in a world anymore where the only conflict in my life is a choice between like water skiing or laying on the beach or whatever, right? That was the choice.
One morning, over at Elizabeth's beach house, she asked me if I'd rather go water skiing or lay out. And I realized that not only did I not want to answer that question, but I never wanted to answer another water sports question or see any of these people again for the rest of my life. 3 days later, I was on my way out to the desert, and that was that.
I think what attracts Anthony, in all these other characters, Dignan and is a sort of like a sense of purpose. Like, like interacting with them just gives himself like a sense of like a direction, a sense of purpose. Like is captured by Dignan's like that personality innocent, but also like by his vision, and he knows that his role probably is not just following the vision, but helping Dignan into sort of a track and that applies to all of like many other like characters in Wes Anderson movies. And that's why I think that Bottle Rocket is important, because in a sense, without the frills that we like listed earlier as like, as part of Wes Anderson world making, worldview, in a sense, you see that all Wes Anderson cinema is character driven.
Yeah.
Like, and in a sense, I can understand that this is very important. This film, like, okay, this is all the frills are gone. We understand that it's all about this, but we can apply the same dynamics to other films. And then
I think that's right. And you mentioned the 5 to 50 year plan or whatever, his big plans for the future and everything. And I think so I want to use that as a pivot point, because planning versus chance is an interesting sort of connection point here between the two movies, because of course Dignan plans out his 50 years or whatever. They get with Mr. Henry, and then Mr. Henry, makes them, they do jobs for him, and eventually they become rich and retire. That doesn't play out. Sort of chance intervenes, and it does not go their way. And Hard Eight is a movie I think that's very much about chance. It's a movie about gambling, and it's a movie I think about like living on that razor's edge of right in between making it and not. And what happens when you forge friendships, I think, in this movie, what happens is that you take on a semblance of risk and chance. And that's, again, what Anthony is wanting to do with Dignan, is he's wanting to inject some chance, some uncertainty into his life by being friends with this misfit. And in Hard Eight, the characters are, I think, attempting to, well, I don't know, but maybe one way to read it is that they're attempting to find stability in a world that is governed completely by chance and where there is no stability to be found. I mean, it's the world of not really high stakes, but the world of gambling. And so in the beginning of this movie, you find John, played by John C. Reilly, sitting outside of a diner, right? He's like completely broke. He's depressed. He's got no direction. He's completely aimless. And into his life walks Sydney, Philip Baker Hall, who just injects his life with a kind of purpose and like points him in the direction of where, points him in at least a direction and sort of solves his immediate short-term problems.
If I were to give you $50, what would you do with it?
I'd eat.
How long can you eat? How long can you live on $50?
I don't know.
I would bet not very long.
You would bet.
I tell you what. You come with me back to Vegas. I'll loan you $50. I'll show you what you did wrong.
So I think in a way, these two characters like forge a connection much in the way that Anthony and Dignan forged a connection, and that they're both sort of attracted to one another. They want to, like, John wants to concede to Sydney. He wants to like let Sydney sort of dictate his life, much in the way that Anthony lets Dignan roughly dictate what they're going to do next. The difference is Sydney seems, at least on the surface, to be an incredibly put together guy. Like, he seems on the surface to be like the kind of guy who knows exactly what's going to happen next at any moment. And this is like borne out in that scene where he's explaining to John like what to do at the next step. And he's like, here's basically how you're going to convince the hotel to give you a free room. You're just going to keep taking money out of this card and then putting it back in, and it's going to keep looking like you have spent more money at the hotel, and thus are a high roller, and then they're going to bankroll you. And it's amazing because like we, the audience, are in the situation John is, where like we're not sure what the hell's going on until it's revealed that like, okay, this is it. But all along, Sydney knew that. Like, so you're just like, man, this guy's like a mastermind.
Yeah, we're like, who's this Moneybags and why is he being so nice to John C. Reilly?
Yeah, exactly. Well, but he also seems to know everything. He knows exactly what's going to happen next at every stage, and you're just like, man, this guy,
he's got it
he's
together.
so together. But of course, that he doesn't.
The guy realized that probably is not that great of a gambler. But like for example, the two times that he mentioned the Hard Eight is that the first time he lost $2,000, and then the second time you see him actually repeating the great, like he loses again, and it's like probably you start like doubting the character. And
I think that's exactly right.
But then again, the opinion on the character changes once again when you see what he's capable of and what his actual motivation for becoming friends with John are, and then what he ends up doing. And I think that's I like how the film surprises the audience in so many ways, because the first person I thought the first time I watched the movie, I watched like Sydney showing up, and I thought for example he had a grand master plan for everyone, and that's probably the I like how probably how T.D. Anderson plays with genre, because you're expecting something completely different, something much more, and then when he receives the calls in the middle of the night, that in a sense like introduces the final like chapter of the film, you realize that okay, this movie is going in a direction I couldn't have expected, and then once again you're doubting yourself. Like it's a small movie in my opinion. I think it's a small movie with a small cast. It's like it's character driven with only four characters. But it keeps you on the edge, even though it's like incredibly slow. Sorry, and
no, totally, yeah. I mean, so this again, this sense of risk, I think, is really interesting because again, the we are just as led along by Sydney as John is, and we the audience, right? And it's exactly as you said, Mattia. We don't know what his true motivations are, and you're wondering the whole time. You're like, I guess he's just kind of grooming him to be like his assistant. But then, of course, you learn, and spoiler alert, you learn that he is exercising a guilt that he has because he's killed John's father. And so then that like completely changes the dynamic of their relationship. And you realize that like, maybe this actually, I mean, I'm not totally sure what you're supposed to think. I mean, I'm actually curious what you guys think. Like, is that relationship ultimately like a good relationship? Once now you know everything between those two characters.
Yeah.
Is it good?
I don't know.
It's built on a lie.
It's built on a lie. And John is not a very intelligent character and has like just like a little puppy dog, which is how Clementine describes him.
Yeah.
Follows Sydney's lifestyle, which like seems like a hard one, you know, like they're itinerant. They live out of a suitcase and they like live on like sort of comped rooms and then I guess just bob between Reno and Las Vegas. Maybe John's happy. Maybe he found a life, you know, a life that works for him and Sydney introduced that to him, but it doesn't feel like Sydney's really changed his life too much for the better.
I think it depends on the point of view. Like you can either see the movie and say, okay, these are really poorly drawn characters. Like John is really stupid, and it's really a puppy that needs somebody to show him around.
Yeah.
And Sydney is just animated by guilt. Is that enough? Or what you see is like a master in writing. That is, you don't need to know too much about the character, what they're doing. In a sense, John is a person who lost his father. We know that his father was killed. We don't know when, in what circumstances, violent ones, apparently, what he was doing. So he's in need of a father.
Yep.
And in a sense, Sydney appears out of the blue and he provides him with a father-like figure.
That's right.
And
he just lost his mother,
Sydney
too.
is animated by guilt and presents himself as a father. I found the scene where they say goodbye heartbreaking, like, I love you like a father. We don't need to know too much. Like it's like reading a short story. I see this as not like as a long form film, like as an extended like short story. In a short story, like most of the work is given to the reader that needs to sort of like connect the dots and then project your own sort of like feelings, expectations, and past experiences, and that's what makes this movie great. Can I add something like that? Probably you haven't mentioned the fact that another element that connects Bottle Rocket and Hard Eight is the fact that both were short films. Like Bottle Rocket was originally like a short, 10, 30 minutes, like a short film, black and white, that won over Sundance, I think, crowd. And Hard Eight was like previously another short film, like 20, 25 minutes, that was produced like in 1993, and it was called Cigarettes and Coffee.
I see. And
I have some questions. I wonder like how Jim Jarmusch was influenced by cigarettes and coffee when he made his own
coffee and cigarettes.
Coffee and cigarettes. Oh yeah.
That's interesting.
Funny.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, I think what I like about the movie is that it does leave this question sort of open, and I think it's genuinely can go different directions. Like how you're supposed to feel about their relationship is not settled by the movie. The movie doesn't say like this is a good thing or a bad thing, and I think there's room for legitimate disagreement and people to take different sides on this matter. And Mattia, you've nicely articulated the pro side, and I was trying to potentially articulate the con side, and it's the relationship built on a lie, and John should probably get as far away from this guy as he can and just be his own person, and he'll never, if he stays under the shadow of Sydney. But what I love, but of course on the pro side, Sydney is absolutely dedicated to John. He helps him whenever, in basically every time of need, and even where it puts his own well-being at risk, he goes ahead and helps him. So there's selflessness there. So it's complicated. And one of the things I think that, again, to go back to the theme of risk, is like, so the movie has, many instances of gambling. And as you pointed out, Mattia, he never wins. Sydney's a terrible gambler. Yeah. He just doesn't, he's not a good gambler. But he he's a con man. That's what it really comes down to, is he's a confidence man. He's a guy that exudes confidence and thus has people, project whatever they think, he is onto him. But then being in a relationship, whatever that is, a father-son relationship or a friendship with someone like that is, I think, incredibly risky. And it's risky for him too, because it's risky for him to be involved with John and Clementine, because first of all, John could find out, and like that could be terrible. But also John he becomes married to Clementine, and Clementine's like a totally messed up person who, can't help herself from sleeping, from being a prostitute.
Judgment by, first of all, accepting Sidney in his life, by choosing Clementine as a wife, and then with all due respect to the character, but and having Jimmy as a friend, who's another sort of like not very poorly.
These are risky things, and whenever you let a person like John into your life, a person like Clementine into your life, that comes with risks, because they make bad choices. And then you are then on the hook to help them because you're a friend and your lives are interconnected. And this is what happens with Sidney is I think when I think back on that scene when he comes to the hotel room and you're like, and John's just like, I don't know, man, I really fucked up. This is bad. And you're wondering, okay, what could it be? And then you realize, okay, like there's a guy, is he dead? What's going on? And then you realize, okay, it was Clementine. And then you realize it was because she just was a prostitute. She just was a prostitute to this guy. And then you realize John and her just got married like hours before this.
It just gets worse.
And
you're
just like, oh my God. And at that moment, you see it on Sidney's face, and I didn't register it at the time, but I think you see it on his face where he's like, fuck this, I'm out. Where he's just like, I'm going to get out of here. Like, I don't need this shit.
Away.
I'm just going to leave. I don't need these lunatics in my life, because being involved with them is not worth the hassle. But then, of course, he stays and he helps them. But anyway, I think there's that moment of like self-doubt where he's like, is this the right thing to be doing?
Yeah. I think love got in the way. When you said like there's a risk with him, having this relationship with John because John could find out this story about how Sidney killed his father, I wonder if like the original plan was to like exercise his guilt by just helping John out of a bind, like finding John, giving him some money, getting him on his feet and getting out. But then it turns out like he loves John. They have like companionship that he doesn't have with his own kids. Right. He's doing things for John over and over again that he doesn't do for his own kids. He doesn't know where they live. But like he and John are like best friends and like soulmates in some way. And so like he can't, so he's putting himself at risk over and over again. And probably, I don't think that was the original plan, but.
I would also reflect on Sidney's like fatherhood like skills, like in terms of, like we understand that there's that kind of relationship when Clementine, before we know that Clementine and John are involved, she reflects, he drinks the same drink as you, he dresses that he wear the same kind of like suits as you do, he was you understand that probably what Sidney wants is really like project himself, because if you want to be a good father probably and you have a past as a gambler, you want something better for your son probably than what you have. What Sidney's doing is like actually mostly like creating a clone of himself, like some kind of offspring that replicates him, and that's kind of like puzzling to me to figure out about his skills as father. That doesn't like diminish the kind of affection that he feels. Like it's true. Like it's again, I said I found it to some extent moving as much as I could care for these characters. But
although the life that he teaches John is a somewhat like gentler version of whatever Sidney's past is. Like Sidney has his vices, but like, he used to have a lot more back in the day. And like we see how that's still in him, at the end of the movie, he's still quite capable of that. But he never pulls John into that world. John is so gentle. He's gentle with him.
He's clearly trying to or has tried to escape that world.
Yes.
Right? He's clearly tried to like put that behind him, and he can't. And
but I think he does want something better for Sidney, and that he doesn't want
John.
Oh, sorry. Sidney does want something better for John than his own life.
But I think what Mattia is saying, which is I think compatible with that though, is that like what Sidney wants that's better for John is what Sidney currently has.
Right.
But what Sidney currently has kind of sucks.
It does. It does.
Right?
Yeah.
But even in presenting himself to Clementine and John, if you think about it, he's gambling even with them, because when they're about to leave to Niagara Falls, and it's like, I promise all the help I can. I'll give you everything I have. And it makes you think, wow, this guy must be powerful and rich. It really, even the way he sort of like presents himself when he arrives at the scene of the crime, like he's called as if he's the Mr. Fix. He's gonna come and gonna fix everything. What is even there within the relationship is bluffing. And and it's like we realize that he only has $6,000 and there's nothing. Like he has a very terrible past and he comes out like as a badass, but still he is gambling with them. But, another provocation, because I want to provoke, because you talk about risk and stakes, and I find that the kind of life that they, like Sydney and John, like live and would live if the incident that happened with Clementine happened, is much more risk than specifically the incident that shuffle things around in the story. Like, because what happens is that Clementine is a prostitute. She called like a client. The client didn't pay, and then they kidnapped me, like in a sense, but it's subconscious. But in a sense, that situation is less compromising than whatever else is happening in the life of Sydney and John.
Yeah.
What do you think about this?
Yes. Yeah. No, it's so stressful. I think that's an amazing part of the movie too, is that you start off thinking Sydney's really great, or not really great, but like that he has his life together and that he's quite wealthy. I had that feeling the way he was,
he comports himself to be a high roller.
Because
that's the con.
Even though he's teaching John how to not spend any money at all. You don't think that's like how he's living too. But then when you see like the 20th scene and he's wearing the same suit, you're like, does he only have one suit?
It's true,
like, is that like all he's got? Like, is he just circulating the same couple, like $1,000 over and over again? Like, that makes me feel panicked just thinking about it, living that way.
I think that the grandest gesture that Sydney's grandest gesture, and the moment where he actually turns into a father, is when helps John and Clementine leave. But not just leave this crime scene, but just mostly leave him behind. Because that's only when they can have a future, that when they finally can leave him behind and have a different kind of life, leaving Jimmy behind, and leave him like Sydney himself. Like I think that goodbye happens regardless of Jimmy dying. I think that's why I see it.
That's really interesting.
Like, it's a moment of like, okay, you're out of my shadow. You can have your own life. But
that's super interesting. So I actually didn't read it that way, but I like that reading a lot more, because the way I was reading it was that he's just going to Niagara Falls for like a month or something, and then it'll blow over and he'll come back and he'll get back to business. But I like your reading, which is that no, that they just said their final goodbye. Like, that's it. Like, that's so much more like poetic and I don't know, more of a, I don't know. It makes the stakes of what's happened in this and what has brought them to this moment like so much greater, and that it makes like his final act of killing Jimmy to basically tie this up like so much more of a I don't know. I'm not quite sure exactly like how it inverts that, but it does make it like it's like he's just like, I'm gonna have to do this one last thing or something, as opposed to like the way my take was like, yeah, and he'll come back, and then there's like an infinite amount of risk that there'll be another Jimmy who finds out, like, and then is he gonna kill that guy? Like, and this is just gonna continue in perpetuity.
Yeah, I mean that when he says there's something I need to tell you and it's very important, and he tells him he loves him, that does feel like a goodbye.
Yeah. Is the end of the movie, remind me of this, is the end of the movie he goes to the same diner, and right? Isn't that he just like walks in and
Yeah. So I think he's saying goodbye to that relationship. That was that important state period in his life. Yeah, because I do think like I thought that was so sad when they were trying to figure out what to do and where to go. And John is like, should we go to Vegas? Like his whole world is just anything. Reno and Vegas. Yeah. And Sydney's like, what are you? No.
He points him to just go somewhere else. Like, it doesn't matter if you've been there or
get out of this ecosystem. And once they're there, they really can have different lives. But as long as like, I think that's the thing, as long as Clementine's going to bars in Reno, she's gonna keep like taking home Johns, because like that's like her world. I don't like
it's like pathological.
One of the themes is like you mentioned it's guilt, but another theme that usually accompanies the theme of guilt is that theme of redemption, or looking for redemption. And then what like Sydney accomplishes by sending his children to is finding or probably seeking this redemption, because that's all probably he was seeking in the first place. Can I add a couple of things that connect the two films?
Please.
One is exactly the way that when I talk about family, like both films are about fatherhood in a sense, and it's like more subtle in Bottle Rocket, because the father figure in Bottle Rocket is probably Mr. Henry.
Mr. Henry,
most of the things that Dignan does is like to impress Mr. Henry. Even when we don't need Mr. Henry, like Dignan is always there. And if father is a theme that you see in so many of Western films, like in Rushmore, like Max and I forgot the name of the industrial.
Bill Murray. Yeah.
And Murray. Like it's for a father figure, even though the Max as a father that is initially ashamed of. Royal Tenenbaum is all about like all these kids that live in the shadow of their father, and his father looking for his own redemption, even though it's not P.T. Anderson, and so forth. Steve Zissou is a father looking for a son.
Yeah, that's
like,
right.
Isn't a child, and so on. But the same is in many of like P.T. Anderson films. Like even though like his filmography is a bit more varied than Wes Anderson in terms of themes and styles, but even in Magnolia, you have like plenty of like father-like figures that are looking for redemption.
The shadow that entirely cast by the shadow over everyone in Magnolia is the dying producer guy. He's the one that connects them all together, because they're all related by somehow to that guy.
And so like I think that the family and especially fatherhood is very important, like for both directors. And I think another way I like to see them together is like through the lens of genre. Like they're both somehow parodies of the genre. Like Bottle Rocket is like sort of a is inspired by the heist genre.
Yeah.
And I think that Hard 8 wants to make you think that you're about to see a heist movie or something similar, whereas he plays with that, like, like they both play with genre, and they both deal with some. Both films has a sense of epic. They both play with the American mythos, like But Rocket again is more subtle in the way it does. It's working. It's more focused on the characters, like whereas Art 8 is really like one of the things that foreshadows whatever comes next in Peter is epic ambition, like sort of like trying to define the character of a nation through these kind of characters.
Yeah,
because there is so much like I was thinking about There Will Be Blood, Magnolia, The Master. They all have like this profound ambition to.
Really quickly on the genre subversion in Hard 8, I was actually thinking, because this is like ostensibly a gambling movie, and we've seen there's like tropes to gambling movies, and one of the tropes is that like if you're in a gambling movie, there's going to be a big high stakes scene where somebody like puts a big bet down, and then like everyone's like, oh, and then they like win the bet or something like that. And in this movie, that scene happens with Philip Seymour Hoffman, who is like in a cameo basically, which is an unbelievable sequence where he's just sitting there like kind of needling Sydney and being like, come on, old man, old timer, like put your bets down. And then he's just kind of like, and you can see Sydney being like, dude, like reflect now that I know where this movie's going. When I think back on it, I'm like, in Sydney's mind at that moment, he's probably thinking, dude, I'm just sitting here trying to pretend like I'm fucking gambling because I'm trying to be a high roller and I'm not without spending any money. So like, stop fucking calling me out, But
like, I'm just trying to like play Keno and like pretend that I'm a high roller. Yeah.
But of course, Philip Seymour Hoffman keeps needling him and he's so annoying. And he's like, and so then eventually he's just like, fuck it. I'm going to show you. I'm going to put down the Hard 8 bet. And he puts it down. He puts the $2,000 on Hard 8 and it doesn't come up. And then he just like walks away. And you're just like, oh man, what a letdown. Like the big moment was that going to be the big moment where you're like, damn, this guy is such a badass gambler. And then it just doesn't go that way.
Coming out again, bet 11 after 7. Come on, old timer, you gonna join us here, my friend? Come on. I don't wait for old people. I don't wait for old people. All right, here we go. Let's see another step. Here we go. 8 easy 8. We're out on a point of 8. Bet it back hard. Okay, I'm gonna light a cigarette now, old timer. See, the thing is, I like you, and I'm gonna light a cigarette. I'm gonna let you have this time to place your bet before I finish lighting this cigarette, and then when I finish lighting, I'm just gonna roll and fuck you. You're laughing at that? I just said fuck you to the man. Jesus Christ. The way you look, I think you know what I'm saying, old timer. I think you do. Jesus Christ, why don't you have some fun? Fun. All right, shaka-laka-doo, shaka-laka-dooby-dooby-doo, shaka-laka-doo. You got a little bit more there. Coming in there, baby. Shaka-laka-doo, baby. I'm almost lighting it, baby. I'm gonna light the cigarette, old timer. What are you gonna do?
$2,000 hard eight.
$2,000 hard eight's a bet.
The fuck? Oh, man. You play that game, don't you? Oh, shit. You're big time. You are big time. Oh, hard eight. Oh, okay, here we go. All right, here we go.
But I think that's the moment of the film where sort of like Sydney's castle sort of like folds, like because at the point, like, you know, you met John, you met like Clementine, you met Producer Morfon, and at first I thought this is going to be a heist movie where Sydney is the mastermind directing everybody to do some kind of major heist, and then I realized, oh no, this guy is really bad, and then it just like goes downhill from there.
I was thinking about like all the father figures in the made up families, both in P.T. Anderson and Wes Anderson movies, are often like these fragile personalities who are kind of fuck ups, but they are maybe imaginative fuck ups or con men fuck ups. Yeah. And so they do sort of draw other people in their orbit. And oftentimes I'd like too that like as in with Hard Eight, Sydney has this like other real family that's like a failed family. There's oftentimes a contrast between like your real family that isn't working and your sort of formed family, your chosen family that's held together for different reasons. And I don't think there's any talk of Burt Reynolds having kids in Boogie Nights, but Julianne Moore does. Right. She's the mother to that group, right? And she's a successful mother in that group. Heather Graham looks up to her, has her, like, they have a mother-daughter relationship that is real and love, but she, in the meantime, like, her actual family is falling apart. She can't get custody of her kids. Her dad, her partner, the father of her children, like, treats her like trash and tells the court that she's terrible and that she's not suited to be a mother.
But I mean, he's arguably right in that regard because she's spending all her time. She's a drug addict and she's spending all her time.
I'm not saying he's wrong, but I'm just saying, like, she's got a real chosen family that she like cannot get it together for, and then like and she's successful as a mother in her own way in this own like sort of twisted, strange family that they've formed.
That's right.
But the dynamic is really strong also in Wes Anderson. So I'm bringing it back. I like
Thank you.
Between the choice between your actual family and the chosen family, the family you choose. Like Anthony and Dignan are brothers virtually, and they've chosen each other. Your family's in the background,
right. And for Bob, that's a more foregrounded conflict.
That's right.
Especially with his brother. I like the fact that was a future man. That actually it's the third like
Andrew Wilson
brother. Like, it's funny.
Yeah.
The fact that after the incident where Mr. Annie like robs them, like, you know, they become closer in a sense after the
I love
you
that.
mentioned that. Yeah,
I love that.
Picking a new piano.
He's like, it actually brought us closer together. We were out shopping for a new piano. They're so rich, it doesn't even matter.
I like about old films, like especially like P.T. Anderson's, like all the non sequitur like sections, like when John C. Reilly's character talks about like the reason why he doesn't like use matches.
So why don't you use these matches?
It's just a rule with me, okay? I don't use matches.
Why not?
I had a really bad experience once, and I promised I'd never use them again.
Tell me.
You know those big monster books of matches, like those Big Daddy ones with like 40 matches in them?
Yeah?
I had one of those in my pocket once, and they just lit on fire, just exploded.
Oh, matches just went off?
Yeah, it's like, it has something to do with friction, I guess. Spontaneous friction. I mean, they just went off. And I'm standing there in line for a movie, and all of a sudden just wham! Whoa! Like that, you know? It scared the shit out of me. And I had a 3rd-degree burn on my leg. It was this close to my dick. And that was a brand new pair of jeans, too, you know?
There's a scene towards the end of Hard Eight when everybody's in their car, like Jimmy in his car, Sidney is in his car, and then Clementine and genre in their cars. And you see like it's cutting between the three. In a sense, it made me sort of anticipating Magnolia, the scene where Julianne Moore like decides to take his life, and then they all start singing Amy Mann song, like in a sense. So I was watching. I was like, okay, this happened before. It was a kind of like a retroactive in like
a cosmic connection moment.
Yes.
Yeah, I like
they
that.
Said, yeah, when you have like especially when you have a big cast of characters, you show them all
even though they're spatially
the device of the song, but here it's more like
right. Yeah, they're bound together by the fabric of the universe, despite being separated by space and time. I mean, I think that there's something profound about that. It's also like once you see that you can do that, it's a little bit like just Soviet montage, which is just put two things back to back and people will infer meaning of it. You know, like I do wonder whether it's like a device which is ripe for abuse.
I thought for a second it was going to go a totally different direction because they were like yawning, right? It's late at night. Sydney's waiting to kill Jimmy in the middle of the night, and John is driving. So I thought something terrible was going to happen. I thought either Sydney was going to fall asleep and then he was going to get shot by Jimmy, or like John was going to run off the road.
That's how he plays with genre. You expect something like it's like maybe nothing happens. Like you expect a twist. There's not a major twist. Like twist happened before, and it's like it's not even that exciting.
Yeah. Actually, on that point, I do think one other theme that runs through Paul Thomas Anderson's filmography that I really like, and I didn't really realize it until The Master. Because I didn't appreciate The Master when it first came out, but I think I appreciated it more upon rewatch, partly because I think one of the things Paul Thomas Anderson is really interested in, we've been talking a little bit about this, but I just want to put a point on it, is this idea of, I think of it as narrative obfuscation. So he gives you enough he gives the audience enough to begin to like have anticipations and expectations about what kind of movie they're watching, like what genre of movie is this and kind of where do I think this is going to go, or just feel at times completely adrift and think I have no idea where this is going to go. I don't know what kind of movie I'm watching. I'm not sure. But then in the final act, effectively tell you everything, that narratively what he was trying to do.
Phantom Thread does that for me.
Phantom Thread is 100% that way.
I was wondering, like, nobody, I haven't mentioned that film yet.
Exactly.
Yeah,
but that's
the whole 100% movie, you're just
like,
are we watching just like two people that don't get along super great, and that's the whole movie?
Or is like she using him?
Is a movie that changes completely genre towards the end.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He's really good at doing that in a way that isn't just like, here's a mystery for you to solve, and in the end, I'm going to solve it for you. Like maybe what you would get in, I don't know, a M. Night Shyamalan movie or something, right? The twist is going to be something which is very clear, and it's part of the plot of the movie or something like that, or like Usual Suspects, or any movie that sort of sets knives out. It sets out, here's a mystery, and at the end of the movie, we'll have solved the mystery. This is a thematic narrative twist in a way. So it's like, I'm going to say, here's an interaction between some characters who are relatively opaque, and you're going to try to figure it out, and I'm going to let you try to figure it out, but I'm not going to give you that much. So you're going to feel in the dark for most of the movie as to like, are these guys good guys? Are they bad guys? What's motivating them? Who should I be rooting for? Whatever, basic kind of thematic narrative stuff. And then that's all going to get answered at the end. And then you'll be thinking back on what they were doing earlier and be like, okay, that's why that conflict was happening, or whatever, or that's why I in that moment I should be feeling this way.
I think we kind of spoil like as viewers, especially watching TV shows, expecting like twist after twist after twist that keeps us like clinging. Like in a sense, I like this kind of like retake on twists by P.T. Anderson. Like sort of like the twist is like genre wide. Like it's like you think this is gonna be this way, but if you take other like criteria, it's going in a different direction.
I saw a cat have a heart attack right at the craft table. I mean, he's in the middle of a hot shoot, starts getting all bothered and sweaty and shit. Next thing you know, bam! Old motherfucker just keels over. Now, the joke of it is, the game just keeps going on. I mean, people are yelling, place to 8. Somebody call an ambulance. Place to 9. Place to 6. Somebody dial 911. Meanwhile, this old bastard's laying on the floor, tongue out, turning purple and shit. Like, the people are still playing.
Kino, any winners?
No, not here.
Okay, so what would be some of your favorite scenes from either of these two movies, would you say?
My favorite scene in Bottle Rockets by far, again, it's very difficult to choose from. I love when Dignan goes like, you never catch me because I am innocent. But the best thing is that when they're discussing the plan, Anthony, Bob, and Dignan with the gun, and it's like, stop, give me the gun, don't touch the gun, I pay for the gun. And it's like, you know what? You're out of the plan. You're out too. You know what? I'm out as well. Something they happen there. When they're discussing the plan, and then they make peace. But it's sort of like the comedic moment where like Bobby wants to play with the gun. I paid for the gun. Yeah. That's my favorite scene.
Are the explosives really necessary here? I think it'd be a lot more simple if I just walk up to the door alone. I think that would be.
Why are you undermining me, man? How much bullets does this thing take?
Bob, look, I'm paying attention. God damn it! You're not paying attention if you're messing around with the gun. Now quit. Anthony, just keep the gun on the table.
I can't focus unless the gun is on the table.
Will you just paid for it? Shut up, man. Shut up. I'm warning you now. Be quiet, please. It's true, Dignan. I paid for the gun. Say it again. Say it one more time. Say it again. Repeat what you just said. I paid for the gun. He's out. You're out too. And I don't think I'm in either.
Just calm
No
down.
gang.
You two just don't give a shit. Come right down to it. Don't care. Kitchen. How's an asshole like Bob get such a great kitchen? Come on.
My favorite scene is now this is easy. It's the easy one, which is the Hinckley cold storage heist. But in particular, my favorite part is when it's everything with Kumar. So they're going in and Kumar, they get into the elevator and Kumar's like, who's this guy? And he's like, that's Applejack. They've been planning this heist for weeks. And he's like, who's this guy? And then he's like, when he's like, I got this. Like he goes over to the safe and he's giving him the thumbs up. And then he just like, I can't do it, man. I can't do it. I don't know. I lost my touch. And then he says, you even have a touch to lose?
You have anything to do with Kumar then.
Oh, I love Kumar, man. It's so funny. So that's my vote. That's my vote.
Kumar, you got problems, right? What are you doing? What are you doing? Sit down.
Man,
Come on, man.
I could not do it, man.
You can't get it?
I tried. No, I could not do it anything.
Come on, man. Bob, will you please put the mask on or turn away? Get it on. Dignan, come on. What's going on? Where's Kumar?
Look at this.
Forget it then. Forget it. Just forget it, man. You can't do it because you never knew how in the first place. Kumar's totally lost right here. What are you guys doing here?
Dignan, get these guys. Get behind these guys.
Where'd these guys
Okay, those are both really good. I guess we're all gonna go Bottle Rock. I mean, I think like
I'm
scene to
thinking on
scene,
Hard
there's
Eight,
like
too.
more. There's more.
No,
fun.
I got one for Hard Eight.
You going for Hard Eight? Okay. I kind of like the country club lunch scene.
Oh, that's a good one.
Where the whole team is together. That's really the only time everybody's all together.
Yeah.
And Mr. Henry gives Future Man the what for, and they're all just like laughing maniacally.
Yeah, I love
like
that.
Kumar and Applejack are just laughing maniacally, and like Bob gets his moment. He doesn't get a lot of moments in that movie. I like that he gets one.
Yeah, I love that scene. That's such a good. I mean, pretty much every scene in that movie is amazing.
Also, I've been to
That's
that
a
country
great-
club. Woo!
Laura, come on. This is a biography of your life, isn't it? Recently on the Lam.
I'm sorry. I just have to like cram in every Dallas reference real quick.
That bookstore, by the way, I was like, I was looking up filming locations and I was like, North Park. And Laura was like, yep, knew it.
Yeah, well, that parking structure is very
I have a
distinctive.
question for Laura.
Yes.
Do you still have the school uniform?
You know, I might. I still have the saddle Oxfords for sure. The shoes, I have those. But I might not have I might have something in that plaid though. I'd like a teddy bear or something that wears like a plaid skirt. Why do you want evidence?
No. I'm just curious. In general, like something that you save, something that you keep. Like it's when you in Italy, like there are no schools with uniform except that everybody has to wear some kind of gown that looks like the gown you wear at graduation. And
Really?
it's bizarre. Like
wow.
But I was at I don't know. I was like the fact that it was a uniform. I love like Max Fisher's uniform in Rushmore.
Yeah.
I like that. This is cool where you have to wear a uniform and then.
That's true.
I kind of liked it too. When I first went, I liked private school. I thought it was like really fun that I got to like wear a plaid skirt, and then I got bored of it because everybody does. But not having to choose your clothes.
And the uniform evens up the level. Like speaking of classes, like everybody's in the same class in the school, but also like it's your team. Like it's like you belong here. There's something fascinating about.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely how Max Fisher feels about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I got one for Hard 8.
Okay.
We've already talked about it, but this is it. This is my favorite scene in Hard 8. It's the Philip Seymour Hoffman cameo. Where he's like, "Come on, old timer." I love that sequence because Philip Seymour Hoffman is he's just off the leash, man. He's just going for it. He's being a dick, and he just keeps amping it up. And you just see Philip Baker Hall like just stewing, just getting more and more pissed at this guy, and until he kind of breaks. But so that's my pick.
That's a really good one. Although I think the motel scene is just like, for all the reasons we described, so incredible, and that it just keeps layering on as the more you understand. I mean, by the time you get to the point and you figure out John and Clementine got married like 3 hours prior to this whole thing, you're like, what the fuck? Because you just, both Justin and I clocked that he's wearing a wedding ring in the very beginning of the scene, and you're just sort of like, oh, but there's so much going on, you have enough time to marinate on that, and then you find out like this is their wedding night.
It's so ridiculous.
It's crazy.
That is funny, actually. I didn't give that movie enough credit for being funny, but that is actually quite funny. When it's revealed they're recently married, and then he's later watching the wedding video that he's given him, right? Oh man, that shit is pretty funny. All right,
my PTA will be. Emotionally, I mentioned the goodbye, but it doesn't have anything, like there's nothing special about the goodbye in terms of cinematography. I think my favorite scene will be the beginning of the film, the diner scene.
Yeah, it's a great scene.
I like the pace. I like how subtle it is, and how much the mystery of like, who's this guy, who's this other guy, and why is he just given like all the trade secret? It just made me sit and say, okay, I want to know more. It just captured me right away. Without anything particularly pyrotechnical, like it's just like storytelling.
It's just simple, just some close-ups, and you just and Philip Baker Hall's face is like one of those faces you just want to like look at all the crags.
I will say one thing about that scene: he shoots them in single frames first. So when they're first talking, it's just a single frame of Philip Baker Hall, then cut single frame of John C. Reilly. Then that's when they're both when C. Reilly is skeptical. He's like, I don't know. And then when he starts to come around, he puts them both in the same frame over the shoulder. So now they're together, as in they're connecting now. And then it's over the shoulder for the rest of it, or in twos, or when they're both in the same shot. So it is like, that is just like filmmaking 101, but it's there, it's deliberate, it's very precise, it's well executed.
Yeah.
It's good.
That's another moment of, sorry, I was just thinking that happens then again in kind of a joke visual way, where he insists on being in the back seat, and then there's a cut. He's like, "Can we pull over?" And then he's in the front seat. Like pretty quickly, they're moving closer and closer together.
Yep. As we said at the top, Paul Thomas Anderson, Wes Anderson film debuts. Now, these are both incredibly strong film debuts. Yeah. They're both movies that come out where you're like, wow, these directors know what they're doing.
They feel so self-assured.
Everything that they're going to do later is, built into these movies and is going to get expanded upon and developed and mastered at a later films. But I was thinking, let's maybe try to make the case for the very best film debut. All right, so I don't know exactly what the criteria of this could be. One way of thinking of it, it's the best movie that just happens to be a debut film. But I think a more interesting criteria would be the best distillation of a filmmaker's craft in their debut film. Mm-hmm. So like maybe, if you're like, I don't know, Fincher, if you think of Fincher as like someone who really likes green color washes, this movie had like the ultimate green color wash.
It was the greenest of greens.
Yeah. It's like the best opening statement of a filmography or something like that.
I have an answer for you. The Virgin Suicide, Sofia Coppola.
Yeah.
I think she's never done a better movie. It's like it's peak Sofia. It's all of her aesthetics and her instincts are just like completely on point. She's just like clicked into the material in an amazing way in that movie, and I think she's never topped it. But I always want to see what she does.
Yeah.
I'm gonna watch On the Rocks. I always want to see, but it never lives up to Virgin Suicides for me.
That's such a good choice.
That's one of probably her most accomplished film. Like in a sense, like she never was able to get something as polished, so accomplished in terms of like cinematography, storytelling. But I love so much Lost in Translation that it's kind of like for me to say that it's like is better than that. Like even it's more flawed, but it's kind of like I love Lost in Translation. Like I watch it over and over. That's my thing.
That's a good argument. I think, I love Lost in Translation as well. And that maybe is more authentically Sophia's movie as opposed to Virgin Suicides, which is pulls so much from the Jeffrey Eugenides book.
But she elevates it, though. I mean, I read the book and I was like, yeah, this is good and everything. But the movie is just because the integration of the music and the just the cutaway sequences at various points and the dreamy lullaby nature of it, where she's like shooting it through filters, and it's just
that's
so
the first
good.
film where I really appreciated the use of filters. That's kind of like, sometimes you get oranges and bluish. It's kind of like, okay, I got filters. Like I enjoy the kind of mood they convey, and it was
everything's like a hazy dream. That whole movie, it's like just a hazy dream, and it really does kind of capture this wistful sense of adolescence, of being being kind of cooped up in your house, and because you can't leave because you don't have a car, you can't do anything, and you're just kind of like looking.
You don't have an escape route through the sewer systems out of your house, so you can't go anywhere.
It's a wonderful movie. Do you have a favorite? Do you have a pitch for top debut, Mattia? Or was it?
Now thinking about it, like I was thinking about Sofia Coppola, but although like I also judge it based on what happens afterwards. I would say Reservoir Dogs is another major one. It's so groundbreaking in terms of not just what Tarantino did, but also how it influenced. Like looking back, like it's, if I were like a person like sitting on the theater watching the film, would be like, oh my gosh, you can tell this is completely new by grabbing from the past, and so
that's a great choice, and I think any such list has to include some discussion of Reservoir Dogs, and if neither of you was going to do it, I was going to do it just to do it. But I'm going to pitch two more possibilities, and then we'll kind of go. I'll mention a couple others that I think would be our nominatable. So for me, I think it would be Virgin Suicides, but I would also want to put the plug in for Blood Simple, because the Coen brothers, I feel like Blood Simple encapsulates everything that the Coen brothers are going to become interested in and go on to do, including comedy and drama and farce and satire. It's just like everything is built into that movie, and it's such a tightly wound movie that it works so much as just a genre piece too. It's just an unbelievable movie, and we should cover it on this podcast. Anyway, the other one I wanted to this is an interesting thought experiment, but I think Get Out, I think we're going to look back on Jordan Peele's career and be like, holy shit, Get Out was like this. I mean, it already in a weird way was this like landmark movie that announced his, I don't know, entry into the scene of horror and commentary movies or whatever. But like, I think at the end of his career, we're going to look back and be like, Jesus, that was like one of the like most like amazing statement sort of first films ever. That's my guess. That's my hypothesis.
Yeah, I think too it was elevated by like the fact that he's young, but he's like a known entity, and like we're just like, it's like the Key and Peele guy, like he's like that silly guy that is like does characters, and then he comes out the gate with this movie that just like is like such a gauntlet. It's amazing. And I loved Us maybe even more than Get Out. I loved Us. So
I really loved Us.
I'm not sure that I think Get Out is like his best movie, and he probably has like even better stuff ahead of him. But I totally agree. It's an incredibly strong debut.
All right. So let's All right. Let's finish up with our rankings now. So we just did Wes Anderson and Paul Thomas Anderson. So we got to rank top 3 Wes and top 3 Paul Thomas.
Do you want to do like round robin Wes and then round robin
we'll
PTA?
go round robin, and we're gonna go ABC CBA. Okay, so who goes first? We'll go last for the other one.
Good God, why do you make everything so complicated?
It's a good strategy.
I got lost at ABC.
All right, Laura's gonna kick us off.
Perfectly clear.
Laura's gonna kick us off with Wes and then Mattia, then me, and then I'll send us back.
Okay. Do you want this to be tight? Like, do you want us to just like fire them off and then, or do you want us to talk about it?
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, and you could say a little bit about it. Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Just say why you chose each.
Okay. I'll be quicker than that. But so my top 3 Wes Anderson. 1, Rushmore. That movie is forever and ever my favorite. 2, Darjeeling Limited for some of the reasons that we talked about. 3, Life Aquatic. I was between Bottle Rocket and Life Aquatic for my third one. And I felt a little sad not putting Bottle Rocket on there, given that this is the episode about Bottle Rocket. But I love the dollhouse world, the cutaway, like dollhouse nature of the boat and how we move through that space and all the sea creatures. It's like a very mannerist Wes Anderson movie, but I love it and I like click into it and I just want to live in that world forever and ever.
Excellent. Mattia.
Rushmore, because I think like
you two guys,
a special place in my heart, but also because it's the perfect like mix of style and storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
Moonrise Kingdom, because it for the same reason, like the story is incredible, but also like it's the same encounter of form and content to a different level. So like in a sense, it accomplishes something that you've already done, but in a probably better. And Final Life Aquatic, because it's flawed, but extremely ambitious and epic, and I'm just extremely moved by the character. And it's really fun.
that obviously it's a great list. My list
flawed
is
and epic. I like that.
Yeah, my list is going to differ slightly, but I'm going Tannenbaum's number 1. And this was when we rewatched all of Wes Anderson's filmography a few years ago, I think getting ready for Grand Budapest Hotel, which we saw with you at the Coolidge.
We saw Moonrise with him too.
Did we?
In New Haven.
In New Haven.
Yes, remember we watched Moonrise Kingdom together, and we like all our friends, like the Griffin, and even my professor of Italian and her husband and son, we occupied an entire row. Like, seriously, the entire one. It was just like I couldn't have been happier. I saw like one of my favorite films with some of my favorite people, and I was like, I'm happier. I couldn't be happier.
That's amazing.
I know, and also that little kid like looks like you, Mattia. Like I feel like it's your movie.
If I show pictures of me, I was a Boy Scout. I have to confess that. And pictures of me in my uniform, you'd be like, oh my god. All my friends would see the film in Italy and were like, oh my gosh, that's Mattia.
It's little Mattia.
That movie it's your movie. I only think of you when I watch it.
Like, I was much more shy as a kid. Like I wouldn't be able the guts to write a letter to the girl I liked at the time. I would have been like daydreaming but not writing a letter. So.
That is very cute. Well, for me, the reason Tannenbaum's made it to the top, which is interesting because it's not on either of your two lists, but the reason, so initially when I watched Tannenbaum's years and years ago, I was like, this movie, I don't like this movie because every scene is too short. Every scene got like truncated. There are scenes in that movie where there's literally 2 lines uttered. And I was like, it's too clipped. Watched it again, getting ready for Budapest Hotel, and I was like totally smitten by it. I think there's some weird black magic that's happening in that movie that I can't put my finger on, and it just like totally resonates with me. But my favorite part is the Custard's Last Stand.
Yes.
Part, which I'll probably drop in the episode.
Do it.
Eli was an assistant professor of English literature at Brooks College. The recent publication of his second novel had earned him a sudden, unexpected literary celebrity.
Well, everyone knows Custer died at Little Bighorn. What this book presupposes is maybe he didn't. Let me ask you something. Why would a review make the point of saying someone's not a genius? You think I'm especially not a genius?
So that's number 1. Number 2 for me is Bottle Rocket. Yes, I love this movie so much. This movie, I used to give it 4.5 stars in Letterboxd. I gave it 5 stars.
Hell yeah!
I really love this movie.
Upgrade.
This movie, I feel like there's so many people that I know that like they'll be like, yeah, I like Wes Anderson, Tannenbaum's Life Aquatic, and I'm like, yeah, have you seen Bottle Rocket? And they're like, what's that? And they haven't seen it. And then I show it to them, and then they're like blown away. They love it because it's so much fun. I love Bottle Rocket. Third, I went with Darjeeling. For me, it's a little bit of a toss-up between Life Aquatic and Darjeeling, which I kind of put in the same camp in that they're both movies dealing with fathers. But I went with Darjeeling because I think the emotional core of Darjeeling is really quite deep, and it's one of the movies in Wes Anderson where he's really, really dealing with an emotional issue front and center. Like these dudes dealing with the death of their dad and whatever shadow remains over them because of that is like right on the surface. And there are just some wonderful sequences of like these guys like struggling to overcome that.
Like all their coping mechanisms are like right there on the screen. Like that's how they're like, that's like their character tics are their coping mechanisms. And then they have to like get deeper.
Asking, if I say something, like asking me to choose between, like, what's in some films is asking me, who do you love more? Your mom or dad? Like, it's really hard. So like, I'm saying it's true. I agree completely with you. Like at that moment, it's really in my heart. Darjeeling Limited. I also love that about Darjeeling Limited is the prologue, the Hotel Chevalier, the wonderful short with Natalie Portman and Jason Schwartzman. Like it's I find it like extremely delicate and sort of like balanced. Like it really gives you the depth of the characters. It's really nice. So.
All right, so I will start us off for PTA.
Just want to say, feel free to cut it out, but I have to add like a trivia. Is that Bottle Rocket was the very first film I watched with Liz. So
that's super cute.
So it's the very first film we watched together.
Where did you see it together?
In HGS.
HGS, yeah. I wasn't sure.
That's where all the magic happened.
No, so much magic happened in HGS.
so much love.
It happens, and it's not gonna happen anymore because it's going to be.
I know.
It's actually being.
It's a humanities center now, right?
I know. That's where all our loves were formed.
Okay, so I'll start us off for Paul Thomas Anderson. So for me, number one, I feel like this is an uncontroversial pick by any standard. Ugh. It is There Will Be Blood. No. It's his best film by like a million miles. It's an absolute masterpiece. It's such a good movie. I force Laura to watch it all the time and she hates it. And
I hate it.
But it's absolutely like an amazing movie. And I don't think Paul Thomas Anderson will ever top it. It's so good. Okay. Second, The Master, absolutely amazing movie. Shooting in 70 millimeter. It's gorgeous. I find the movie excruciating at times, so oblique that it can be off-putting, and yet it's like I'm just drawn to it. And then third, I'm going Punch Drunk Love. I was between Punch Drunk and Boogie Nights, but I really do like Boogie Nights a lot. But Punch Drunk for me, we watched it recently again, and I was just like smitten by it. It's a short movie. It's like under 90 minutes, I think, and it's just there's that sequence where the Popeye song is playing, right? That all
He Needs Me, yeah.
And all at once I knew at once, I knew he needed me.
And that is playing and it sort of culminates in them kissing or whatever, like that sort of silhouetted kiss and embrace, I guess, and kiss. And it's just like, it's kind of magical. And I realized like in that moment, I was like, wow, this movie is pulling, it's doing, I think, what La La Land was like trying to do and not totally succeeding. It should have just been like, see Punch Drunk Love. So that's my three for PTA. Mattia.
So my number one PTA Anderson is There Will Be Blood, probably for the same reason that you mentioned. It just like
how could you disagree with this, Laura?
There is something that I admire about, and it's the epitome of PTA Anderson cinema, is this sort of epic, grand, sort of like trying to figure out. There's something about the American myth in that film that really captures me. Like it helps me understand as a non-American, like it helps me understand better. Like it's one of those things that try to go deep into the soul of the country, and that's one of the way I appreciate it. But it's also the perfect acting, the perfect, like the Paul Dano is amazing in the film. Like I remember, like you can cut this, but for years, for weeks, let's say, I kept reciting the milkshake scene to Griffin. That's why he doesn't reply to my text messages. I remember that, like, if I have a milkshake, and I have a straw, like, you know, that scene is immortal. And the other way we were watching an episode of Community, and that scene is referenced a couple of times in the scenes in the TV shows. But also like Magnolia, because it's the first film I watched by Wes Anderson, by P.T. Anderson, and again the grand scale, it captures me, like, and the characters, and it's a nocturnal film that I love. So that there is so much that I love about the film. It's personal, and The Master, for the reason that you listed, like it's just like it's another great film. I would also add to the list, number 4, probably, if it's not allowed, Phantom Thread. Like, it's a very small film, but I love it. And then Punch Drunk Love. I don't know. That's too much.
I know.
It's hard to pick.
It's really hard.
It's hard. Okay, but not that hard, because you know it's never going to be on my list. There Will Be Blood. Hard pass.
That's why I said what I said, because Laura and I
uncontroversial,
disagree so hard on that movie.
I hate that movie.
We will eventually do an episode on that movie, much like our Forrest Gump episode. We will disagree.
Yeah, but you'll have backup on that one, because Molly will be on there to
maybe
talk
it
about
should
how
just
much
go solo so that no fair fight.
Maybe. Okay, my top 3 PTA. Number 1, Punch Drunk Love. This movie has everything. It has blue suits. It has pudding. It has Love on the Spectrum. Before that was a show. It has sex hotline scams. What more could you want?
You forgot Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Philip Seymour Hoffman. Well, he's part of the sex hotline.
I know, but yeah.
I was including him. Love that movie. Everything about it, everything it chooses to be. Magnolia, that movie meant so much to me. I mentioned the Amy Mann soundtrack. Okay, Angsty Laura would have lyrics from Amy Mann songs on her profile, on her AIM profile. You know how you could have it lame profile or your away message, and it would just be Amy Mann lyrics written in pink font. That was where I was at.
Fun fact is that Paul Thomas Anderson also did that for his AIM away profile. He loves Amy Mann, as we established in the credit sequence of Hard Eight.
As do I. All of my tender 15-year-old feelings were just found their home in Magnolia. And then The Master, which was not a movie that I, like you, immediately understood. I think that movie, you got to grapple with it. You got to come at it 4 or 5 times. And I get new stuff out of it every time. And the performances are incredible. I love that movie. It's haunting.
Yeah, I mean, Mattia, were you with us when we watched The Master too? Did we watch it together?
We watched it together, but I think I had to rewatch it again. I agree. It's a film that you have to watch more than once.
Because I remember watching it with Laura, Griffin, maybe you. I can't remember if you were there. And then you were saying a bunch of other people, the HGS people were there.
Yeah.
And I remember we came out of the movie, and I remember being I don't know, it wasn't There Will Be Blood. But then Griffin was very high on it. Griffin was that movie was a masterpiece, and we were talking about it. And I think you were very high on it initially too.
Yeah, because I was thank God it's not There Will Be Blood.
Yeah.
I was what this movie doesn't have? It does not have certain actor that I hate.
She doesn't like Daniel Day.
Oh, okay.
I don't like it when he chews the scenery, aka in every movie.
Well, Daniel Day-Lewis is at its most hateful in 9, that musical
sequel to 8.
Oh yeah, how do you feel about that movie, Mattia?
I mean, the movie is extreme. If you watch it on mute, it's great. Because it visually is stunning, but it's even too polished. It's like a perfume. It's like a fragrance advertisement that lasts for 2 hours. It's watching a Dolce & Gabbana ad. But the songs are kind of I know it's a musical, so I never saw the musical. But Daniel Lewis speaking with a thick sort of filmic Italian American accent is the most abominable thing. I don't still understand why he accepted that role. It was I'm a director. Oh my God! I understand that I have an accent. I'm an Italian, but it's not that accent.
Yeah, you're not a pizza pie. Yeah.
And it's what's terrible is that I was reading stories about the set. Is that I said, Daniel Lewis is such a good actor. He's always in character, even in set. When you talk to him between scenes, he would speak to you in Italian. I said, wait, dude, it's not Italian. And then so the character is just...
He's just a caricature.
Oh, no.
Yikes. Well, I've not seen that movie.
Especially messing with one of the greatest film in the history of cinema.
That's what I was going to ask, how you feel about such a thing. Sequels nobody asked for. Yeah.
Well, I have a feeling I'm never going to watch this movie, partly because it's a bad movie and partly because it has Daniel Day-Lewis, whom Laura hates.
You know,
So
I watch any DDL you make me watch, though. It's fine. Please continue.
No, I mean, okay, yeah, I don't force you to watch that much DDL, except There Will Be Blood once or twice a year.
Twice a month. It's fine.
Yeah. Okay, thanks so much, Mattia, for being on the podcast. This was a blast, and thank you. Yeah, we knew when we were deciding Wes Anderson Bottle Rocket, we were like, it's obviously got to be Mattia. Like Mattia is the person that we know. You're the person that we know that I think is the biggest Wes Anderson fan. Like I think we've seen so many of his movies together, and when they first came out, and he's been a part of our lives in our like conversational background.
It requires self-control, I have to say. I mean, I could have said much more. Like, I'd be like, oh my gosh, Wes Anderson, like how much love my scenes.
It's true. I
was self-restrained.
Well, we have to be restrained because otherwise this podcast would last for 6 hours and we would lose every listener. Okay. Mattia, thank you so much. This was amazing. This is so much fun having you, and thanks for giving us all your time. It was also good to just catch up.
Of course, that's the best part. I really was really enjoyable. I had lots of fun. So,
all right. So, thanks for everyone for listening. We are at CowsPod on Twitter. Be sure to follow us there if you want to get updates on what's coming next and so on, what we're going to be doing. We've got a lot of interesting things planned, including some interviews, some guests, some very special guests coming up. The next film series, the next set of films that we're doing is Space Jam and Kazam with returning guest Vishal Dave, my friend from college, who's a basketball master. And so we're going to get into basketball stuff in that episode. We are online. We are cowspod.wordpress.com. You can go there for episodes and so on. And you can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. So please do that. And if you do, and if you like the podcast, give us a rate or a review. That, I don't know, I guess that helps promote it, or tell your friends. Thanks, everyone. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Just you and I together.